It's good to be here with all of you. I'm Derek Wilmot, and I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson's Worship Associate Team. Even though our building is closed, we gather together for weekly online worship. At 11:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings, we also gather for social connection and the sharing of joys and concerns in our Zoom meeting. Each week, this community comes together to participate in worship, music, reflection, and prayer. This is where we seek to have our hearts opened and our imaginations fired. This is the place that reminds us that we are deeply connected to one another and all living things. Our opening words today come to us this morning from Matthew Johnson. For 5,000 years or more than 15,000 generations, human beings have been invoking spiritual power. My predecessors and yours have gathered together to make sense of their lives and their place in the cosmos, and they have spoken aloud and invited what they conceived as sacred and powerful to be with them. They call upon the spirits of air and earth, fire and water. They called the bear and deer. They asked for the raven to protect them. They pleaded for the heroes of old to slay the monsters of their fears. They sang songs they learned from their grandparents and moved in the appointed ways, or in ways that were new, but felt like the right thing to do. And they imputed power to those spirits and to the memories of those heroes. They called them gods, and they were invoked Vishnu and Kali, Elohim, Odin, and 100 million others. Every group of people, everywhere. They gathered to make sense of their lives and to make sense of their place in the cosmos. And they called these spirits to be present to them. And so do we. So do we. We gather this morning to make sense of ourselves and this universe in which we live as best we are able. And we call ourselves to worship together, and we invoke the power and wonder of life itself, that to which all those spirits of animals and memories of heroes pointed the way. We invoke the power which is, we know, always around us, always with us, but which we sometimes forget. We forget that we are a part of the whole of creation. We forget that we are stardust. We forget we are capable of miracles, first among them that we can love. We forget these things. So we invoke the power of existence so that we can remember, so that we can lift our eyes and open our ears to the true and beautiful. For 5,000 years or more, we have done this in many tongues, in many ways. We have done this. And so we continue that ancient tradition in our way and in our time. And so let us now worship together.
Good morning. My name is Sarah McNeil. I've been a member of this fellowship for approximately 6 years. I'm here this morning to talk to you about stewardship. I have a confession to make. Maybe it's my Catholic background showing, but I must confess I have never supported a faith organization like I have supported this one. Never. Why is that? You might ask. Well, sometimes it may have been because of a lack of resources, I told myself, but really it was a lack of commitment. My sister says I'm not cheap, but I am frugal. I want my resources to be well spent. I am committed to this beloved community, and it's easy because this community is committed to many of the principles that I am committed to, and my money is well spent. An example is UUFC's initiative to start and its commitment to the Clemson Area Pledge to End Racism. I was privileged to attend a series of workshops arranged by this UUFC-inspired organization before the pandemic hit us. Even during the pandemic, we are working to end racism here. The work that this committee is doing will change the world. This beloved community will change the world. Supporting UUFC with your talents and your treasure will change the world. Please commit today. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Holley Ulbrich, your worship leader today. I'd like to invite you to join me in the affirmation as we light the chalice. We gather together in a spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to care for one another. I now light 2 candles, a candle for joys and a candle for sorrows and concerns. The candle for joys that we have experienced this week includes births and obstacles overcome, and friends returning, and time with loved ones, recovery from illness and successful surgeries, opportunities to grow and learn, and to give and receive care. Our sorrows and losses and pain include division and conflict, illness and loneliness, and concerns also for those doing the work in these trying times. For the first responders, the nurses, the caregivers, the teachers, and others who provide support and care during difficult circumstances. So I invite you to take a moment of silence to reflect on the joys that you celebrate with us in your heart, and the sorrows and concerns that we wish we could offer you comfort and support. Joy shared is multiplied. Concerns shared are made more bearable. Pain and loss shared bring comfort and the knowledge that we are not alone. May it be so. Amen. And bless you.
Hello, it's good to be with you all again. Today, in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, I'd like to share a different kind of story with you. When people celebrate Columbus Day, they tell the story of how Christopher Columbus discovered the New World. But that discovery must have come as quite a surprise to the native people who already lived on what many of them called Turtle Island. But the Indigenous people don't often get to tell their side of the story of that first meeting. So, a few years ago, a writer from the Cherokee tribe and an illustrator from the Swampy Cree decided to create a modern telling of the story from a native point of view. To do that, they used a favorite character from many native North American stories and legends, the trickster god, Coyote. In these traditional stories, Coyote, much like the African figure of Anansi, tries to play tricks on other animals and people. But things don't always work out well for Coyote or the other characters. In a way, the stories poke as much fun at Coyote as they do at those he's trying to trick. Coyote stories make you laugh, but they also make you think. Today's story is a modern telling, and the author uses a lot of what we call anachronisms, things from one time that don't really belong in another, like, for example, dinosaurs driving cars. But since this is a coyote story, it's all just part of the fun. I hope you enjoy. A Coyote Columbus Story by Thomas King. Pictures by William Kent Monkman. It was Coyote who fixed up this world, you know. She is the one who did it. She made rainbows and flowers and clouds and rivers. And she made prune juice and afternoon naps and toenail polish and television commercials. Some of these things were pretty good, and some of these things were foolish. But what she loved to do best was play ball. She played ball all day and all night. She would throw the ball, and she would hit the ball, and she would run and catch the ball. But playing ball by herself was boring. So she sang a song, and she danced a dance, and she thought hard, and pretty soon along came some beavers. "Let's play ball," says Coyote. "We've got better things to do than play ball," says those beavers. "We have to build a dam so we'll have a pretty pond to swim in." "That's all very nice," says Coyote, "but I want to play ball." So Coyote sang her song, and she danced her dance, and she thought hard, and right away along comes some moose. "Let's play ball," says Coyote. "What a foolish idea," says those moose. "We'd rather wade in that lovely pond over there." And they do that. "Playing ball is a lot more fun," says Coyote, but those moose don't hear her. "I better sing my song and dance my dance and think real hard again," says Coyote. And she does. And in a while, along come some turtles. "You're just in time to play ball," says Coyote. "What a sweaty idea," says those turtles. "We'd much rather lie on a nice warm rock in the middle of that beautiful pond." "But who will play ball with me?" cries Coyote. "Tra-la-la-la-la," sing those beavers and moose and turtles in that happy pond. "I'll get it right this time," says Coyote. And she sings her song and dances her dance and thinks so hard her nose falls off. And right away along come some human beings. "Do you want to play ball?" says Coyote, and that one makes a happy mouth and wags her ears. "Sure," says those human beings. "That sounds like a good idea to us." "Hooray," says Coyote, and she lets the human beings hit the ball first. Well, Coyote and those human beings become very good friends. "You sure are good friends," says those human beings. "Yes, that's true," says Coyote. But you know, whenever Coyote and the human beings played ball, Coyote always won. She always won because she made up the rules. That sneaky one made up the rules, and she always won because she could do that. "That's not fair," says the human beings. "Friends don't do that." "That's the rules," says Coyote. "Let's play some more. Maybe you will win next time." But they don't. "You keep changing the rules," says those human beings. "No, no, 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 no," says Coyote. "You are mistaken." And then she changes the rules again. So after a while, those human beings find better things to do. Some of them go shopping. Some of them go skydiving. Some of them go to see big-time wrestling. Some of them go on a 7-day Caribbean cruise. Those human beings got better things to do than play ball with Coyote and those changing rules. So Coyote doesn't have anyone to play with again. So she has to play by herself. So she gets bored. When Coyote gets bored, anything can happen. Stick around. Big trouble is going to come along, I can tell you that. Well, that silly one sings a song and she dances a dance and she thinks really hard. But she's thinking about changing those rules too, and she doesn't watch what she is making up out of her head. When Coyote stops all that singing and dancing and thinking, and she looks around, she sees 3 ships and some people in funny-looking clothes carrying flags and boxes of junk. "Oh, happy days," says Coyote. "You are just in time for the ball game." "Hello," says one of the men in silly clothes with red hair all over his head. "I am Christopher Columbus. I am sailing the ocean blue looking for India. Have you seen it?" "Forget India," says Coyote. "Let's play ball." "It must be around here somewhere," says Columbus. "I have a map." "Forget the map," says Coyote. "I'll bat first and I'll tell you the rules as we go along." But that Christopher Columbus and his friend don't want to play ball. "We got work to do," they says. "We got to find India. We got to find things we can sell." "Yes," says those Columbus people, "where is that gold?" "Yes," they says, "where is that chocolate cake?" "Yes," they says, "where are those computer games?" "Yes," they says, "where are those music videos?" "Boy," says Coyote, and that one scratches her head. "I must have sung that song wrong. Maybe I didn't do the right dance. Maybe I thought too hard. These people I made have no manners. They act as if they've got no relations." And she is right. Christopher Columbus and his friends start shouting and jumping up and down in their funny clothes. "Boy, what a bunch of noise," says Coyote. "What bad manners. You guys got to stop jumping and shouting or my nose will fall off." "We got to find India," says Christopher Columbus. "We got to become rich. We got to become famous. Do you think you can help us?" But all Coyote can think about is playing ball. "I'll let you bat first," says Coyote. "No time for games," says Christopher Columbus. "I'll let you make the rules," cries Coyote. But those Columbus people don't listen. They are too busy running around looking for India, looking for stuff they can sell, and pretty soon they find that pond. "I see a $4 beaver," says one. I see a $15 moose, says another. I see a $2 turtle, says a third. Those things aren't worth poop, says Christopher Columbus. We can't sell those things in Spain. Look harder. But all they find are beavers and moose and turtles. And when they tell Christopher Columbus, that one squeezes his ears and he chews his nose and he grinds his teeth. He grinds his teeth so hard he gets a headache. And then he gets cranky. And then he gets an idea. Say, says Christopher Columbus, I'll bet this is India. And he looks at the human beings. I'll bet these are Indians. And he looks at his friends. I'll bet we can sell these Indians. Yes, says his friends, that's a good idea. We could sell Indians. And they stop trying to catch those beavers and moose and turtles. Whew, says those beavers and moose and turtles. That was close. And they run and hide before Columbus and his friends change their minds. Wait a minute, says the human beings. That is not a good idea. That is a bad idea. That is a bad idea full of bad manners. When Coyote hears this bad idea, she starts to laugh. Who would buy human beings, she says, and she laughs some more. She laughs so hard she has to hold her nose on her face with both her hands. But while that Coyote is laughing, Christopher Columbus grabs a big bunch of men and women and children and locks them up in his ships. When Coyote stops laughing and looks around, she sees that some of those human beings are missing. Hey, she says, where are those human beings? Where are my friends? I'm going to sell them in Spain, says Christopher Columbus. Somebody has to pay for this trip. Sailing over the ocean blue isn't cheap, you know. Grab some more Indians. But the rest of the human beings see Columbus coming, and they jump in the pond. I'm a beaver, they says. I'm a moose, they says. I'm a turtle, they says. Says Columbus, and he scratches his nose. Where did all the Indians go? They went that way, says those beaver human beings and moose human beings and turtle human beings, and they point in all directions. Wait a minute, says Coyote. What about my friends you have locked up in your ships? You got to let them go. Tra-la-la-la-la, says Columbus, and that one goes back to Spain and sells the human beings to rich people like baseball players and dentists and babysitters and parents. Another couple of trips like this, Columbus tells his friends, and I'll be able to buy a big bag of licorice jelly beans and a used Mercedes. After Columbus and his friends leave, the beavers and the moose and the turtles come out of hiding, and the human beings come out of the pond. You're supposed to fix up the world, cried those beavers and moose and turtles. You're supposed to make it right, but you keep messing it up too. Yes, said the human beings, you better watch out or this world is going to get bent. Everything is okay, says Coyote. I made a little mistake, but I'll take it back. I'll take Christopher Columbus back. You'll see, everything will be balanced again. So Coyote sings her song, and she dances her dance, and she thinks really hard. She thinks so hard her nose falls off again. And when she looks around, she sees another bunch of funny-looking people. Bonjour, says one of those funny-looking people. I'm Jacques Cartier, and I'm sailing the ocean blue. Uh-oh, says those beaver and moose and turtles and human beings. Coyote's done it again, and they catch the first train to Penticton. Don't panic, says Coyote. Everything is under control. I'm looking for India, says Jacques Cartier. Have you seen it? Coyote makes a happy mouth, and that one wags her ears. Forget India, she says. Maybe you want to play ball.
My calendar says that Monday is Columbus Day. On other people's calendars, it may say Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm torn. Yeah, Columbus was kind of a jerk, product of a period in history which we now consider to be appalling behavior was frequently routine. Colonialism was in full swing. And being considered somewhat less than human, the natives were considered fair game for torture and enslavement, rape, and murder. In my hometown of Torrington, Connecticut, Columbus was a hero to the overwhelmingly Italian-American majority, although perhaps Amerigo Vespucci would have been a better choice. For one thing, he sounds more Italian. We don't know a lot about Columbus other than that he was Italian. He sailed on behalf of Spain. He treated the native peoples very badly, and he was bad at either math or geography. We're not sure which. Yes, he did know the world was round. Most everybody did. My birth family was anti-Catholic and anti-Italian. They insisted that Catholics worshipped idols, which, of course, they didn't and don't. Catholic statues are focal points and role models, visual reminders of their heritage and of those saints whose lives the devout should try to emulate. Like Columbus, some of whose statues have been taken down, Catholic saints were a mixed lot. I reserve particular lack of enthusiasm for Saints Paul and Augustine. If we UUs did statues, they might include Michael Servetus, Francis David, and John Quincy Adams. For us, Unitarian John C. Calhoun might be a hard sell. When I was in seminary taking Hebrew scriptures, we read about the Exodus from the perspective of the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the Promised Land at the time the Jewish exiles arrived. African Americans have adopted the imagery of the Exodus because it's about escape from slavery. As my late choir director, Merrill Palmer, used to say, when African slaves in the South sang spirituals about the Promised Land, they didn't mean Palestine or Israel or even heaven. They meant Ohio. The people who were living in the land of Canaan didn't view the Exodus or the Jewish invasion of their homeland in quite the same positive way, and neither do their Palestinian descendants. Or for that matter, the Cherokees and Catawbas who occupied this part of the South. There are at least two sides to every story, and history is usually, but not always, written by the winners. In the stories of Exodus and the American Revolution, there are multiple versions. There's Britain and the Pharaoh of Egypt, there's Jewish colonists and British colonists, there's Jewish slaves and African slaves, and there's native inhabitants. The choice of statues is going to send different messages to different groups. Closer to home, our home that is, are the issues of the Confederate flag, the monuments, the statues, the building names. No matter what the president says, we are not going to tear down statues of Washington and Jefferson because they owned slaves. That's, as they would say in the Supreme Court, settled law. But after all, like Columbus, they were products of their time, and they left us a rich but complicated and uneven heritage. Yes, we should banish the Confederate flag and statues of Confederate generals to museums because they took up arms against the Union under that flag, which has become a symbol of racist hatred to many. Yes, the buildings and schools and streets named for Pitchfork Ben Tillman, notorious as a lynch gang leader as well as a governor, that's a prime candidate for review. And even reconsidering the Heritage Act, which requires a 2/3 majority of the legislature to take down a statue, rename a building on any kind of public property, including city property, county property, school district property, and college and university property if they are public institutions. Maybe they need to be able to consult their constituents. John C. Calhoun is one of those people with a mixed heritage. He lived just up the street from us on his plantation. He owned slaves, he supported slavery, he served in the U.S. Senate and as vice president. He died in 1850, 11 years before the Civil War. His property went to his son-in-law, Thomas Clemson, who in turn willed it to the state in the 1880s for a high seminary of learning for the agricultural and mechanical arts, for, of course, white males. Clemson served in the Confederate Army and owned slaves. So when Clemson University changed the name of Calhoun Honors College to Clemson University Honors College, they were just trading the name of one slave owner for another. The university also petitioned the General Assembly to be allowed to change the name of Tillman Hall back to its pre-1946 name, Old Main. I have a soft spot in my heart for John C. Calhoun. I wrote his biography for the Dictionary of UU Biography. Yes, he was a Unitarian. Along with John Quincy Adams, he was a founding member of All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. He thought only one of his many children was worth much, and that was his daughter and confidant Anna Maria, who married Thomas Clemson and served as her father's secretary when he was a senator. He gets brownie points for appreciating his daughter. He also made useful contributions to political theory and worried about the future of the South because he knew that slavery's days were numbered. Was he a hero? And then there's Ibram Kendi, who wrote the book How to Be an Anti-Racist and notes that he graduated from Stonewall Jackson High School. Just try to imagine being Black and attending a high school named for a Confederate general. Was Stonewall Jackson a hero? According to Norman Schwarzkopf, who should know, quote, "It doesn't take a hero to order men into battle. It takes a hero to be one of those men who goes into battle. A hero is a role model for children and adults." Here are some other definitions from Joseph Campbell. A hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than the self. From Maya Angelou, a hero is any person really intent on making this a better place for all people. From Arthur Ashe, true heroism is remarkably sober, not dramatic. It's not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost. And finally, from the man who played a superhero on the big screen, Christopher Reeve. He said, "What makes Superman a hero is not that he has power, but that he has the wisdom and the maturity to use that power wisely." In our market-based culture, naming rights are for sale. For the right price, you can name a building, a school, or a stadium for yourself, or in professional sports, your company. That's how the building formerly known as Old Main on the Clemson campus was renamed for Tillman in 1946. But right now, crass commercialism is not the issue. That's a different sermon. The question is, how do we honor and respect all of the people of the state and nation, past and present? In South Carolina, the name of Strom Thurmond's first child, Essie Mae Washington, his biracial daughter by the family maid, was added to his monument on the State House grounds, and that was a good first step. But where is the statue of Robert Smalls, the slave who stole a Confederate Navy ship from the blockaded port of Charleston and delivered it to the Union blockade ships with the words, "Christmas present for Mr. Lincoln"? He served in the Union Navy and later in the South Carolina General Assembly. The main street in Beaufort where he was born is named Robert Smalls Boulevard. Where's the statue of Denmark Vesey, who started a slave revolt in Charleston and was betrayed and executed? Where are the statues of the early 19th century abolitionist sisters Sarah and Angelina Grimke? They were daughters of a white Charleston judge and plantation owner. Well, good news. They now have a brand new mural in Spartanburg where the Grimke family spent its summers, thanks to the Spartanburg League of Women Voters and the Spartanburg UU Church, on whose side wall it appears. But there are many other heroes and heroines that deserve to be honored for the good that they did and the model that they left for future generations. The theology underlying this dilemma, at least for us UUs, is clear. We do not believe in original sin, and we have serious doubts about original blessing, which is the idea that humans are made in the image of the divine. I sort of believe in both, metaphorically. We are a mixed bag of goodness and narrow self-interest, of aggression and affiliation, a work in progress. Some of our civic ancestors are also our religious ancestors. Foremost among them was Thomas Jefferson, who shared our passion for ideas and freedom and democracy and was a self-proclaimed Unitarian. And he also owned slaves, whom he could not afford to set free after his death, not even his mistress Sally Hemings and their slave offspring. John Quincy Adams was also a Unitarian, a fellow member with Calhoun of All Souls Unitarian Church, who represented the mutinying slaves in the Amistad case. He was also a one-term president. There are a lot more buildings and schools and streets named for Jefferson than for Adams. What matters is not just the people we honor, most of them dead, but rather the message we send when we honor them. A lot of our buildings, streets, and statues in South Carolina honor people who are part of the state's history. But I recall from growing up in Connecticut that I attended Midgeon Avenue Elementary School and Torrington High School and lived on Riverside Avenue, which were all good geography lessons in the days before having something on your phone that can point you to the right place. And I also recall a lot of names of indigenous peoples: Willimantic, Naugatuck, Housatonic, the state's own name, Connecticut, and Quinnipiac, which is both a river and the name of a very well-respected polling company that does political polling. Many of those honored with state statues and names of buildings, streets, and even intersections are heroes to some whites, anathema to African Americans, and often also offensive to Native peoples. Some, like Tillman, have few, if any, redeeming qualities. Others are a mixture, while still others are largely neglected for the good that they did, like the Grimke sisters and Robert Smalls. Recently, the State League of Women Voters Board appointed an African American as our Director for Racial Justice. At the time, we were working on a fundraising campaign and naming levels of giving for individuals. None of those we had picked out were African American, and at least one of the best-known leaders of the suffrage movement, was definitely and openly racist. So our new board member's first act was to write a eulogy for John Lewis, but her second was to ask us to remove the name of that woman from our circles of giving and honor someone more deserving. We appreciated her willingness to challenge us to the message that we were unintentionally sending. Statues, and to a lesser extent building and street names, remind us of our past. They offer role models to our children. They perpetuate a certain version of history. There are a few saints among us, so we take the good with the bad. But the mix is important. We need more statues, not fewer. When we keep a statue, we need at least to post a justification for the good that that person did. Shakespeare, speaking as Mark Antony, might have foreseen the legacy of the Confederacy when he claimed that the evil that men do lives after them, the good is oft interred with their bones. Sometimes one person's evil is another person's act of courage and heroism. Lessons for the days ahead. Listen to those whose experience of the past is different from your own. We can start by honoring October 12th as Indigenous Peoples Day, and maybe also by renaming the District of Columbia and granting it statehood to this majority African American city. We can learn more about our own state's history. Next time you drive through Beaufort, smile when you get onto that main road, Robert Smalls Boulevard. If you're in Spartanburg, seek out the Grimke Sisters mural. Find out why Tillman maybe doesn't belong in his place of honor. Ask the legislature if they'd give people, cities and counties and school districts and colleges and universities, a little more flexibility to listen to all their diverse constituents, students, faculty, staff, and alumni for colleges, residents, and taxpayers for local government, and then decide what they want to display. We are called to honor the good and condemn the evil that people do, and to figure out when the balance of good over evil is sufficient to justify the honor. Symbols matter. Heroes and heroines matter. As poet William Stafford wrote, "It is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes, no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep." Amen. May it be so.
And now our reflection. Courage requires vulnerability, by Marisol Caballero. Though we tremble before uncertain futures, we may meet illness, death, and adversity with strength. May we dance in the face of our fears, writes trailblazer Gloria Anzaldúa, who knew a thing or two about courage, by the way. Courage requires both vulnerability and careful strategy. Like other people of color, I don't often show my full self in mostly white company. I am guarded, not inauthentic, because the me that has learned to navigate mostly white space or spaces is a part of me. It just isn't my whole self. To bring myself, my full self, would risk being misunderstood. More than that, I would risk inviting even more harmful words and behaviors into my day. And already each day is an exhausting dance of negotiating interactions and conversation. Hundreds of times a day I must ask myself, how much of me do I allow this person or group to see? How much of that decision is about risking vulnerability? And how much is about self-preservation? Does withholding my full self alleviate the discomfort of another? Or does it bring me closer to true freedom? Who benefits from this risk more? Courage is not demanding safety when confronting the annoyance of having one's haughty and long-held answers questioned. It is incompatible with despair. Courage is not becoming defensive or insisting upon being viewed as an individual when the privileges of membership in a dominant group are brought to light. Rather, courage recognizes that growth insists on a willingness to be utterly transformed. Courage is not believing that anyone is helping or coming to the assistance of members of marginalized groups. Rather, it is recognized that the need to play savior comes from societal brainwashing caused by systems that convince some they are superior over others. Courage is seeking one's own liberation from these lies, knowing it will require a relinquishment of power and an admittance that they've been bamboozled. Courage does not require perfection from us, or airtight plans, or even expertise. I'll tell you what courage does require. Courage requires taking great risks while stepping into the unknown. It takes no courage to shut one's mouth, step aside, and listen when needed. The only thing that at risk here is one's ego, a self-identity built around the myth of superiority. Courage does not ask us to stop trembling. It asks us to find ways to incorporate our trembles into our dance. Courage, the faithful companion of hope, is sticking around when we and us are spoken in contexts that clearly don't mean me. Courage is claiming this faith as home when nearly everything around me says I'm out of place, yet everything inside me says I am home. Courage is the generations and generations of ancestors who taught us to actively pursue joy, laughter, and celebration alongside outrage, grief, and fatigue. The goddess Tananantzin, Madre de los Mexicos, bringer of corn, Nuestra Morenita, teaches that we can make for ourselves a place of comfort and leave room for wonder, even when our home has been invaded and has become nearly unrecognizable. Courage is being firm and saying, I know exactly where home is and what it looks like. I will figure out any way to get there with the help of good friends. We will dance the whole way there, through the terrifying unknown. I will brave the rough waters, knowing that my boat may be small, but it is strong. I will leave a trail of beauty in my wake so that other courageous seekers who follow will not be lonely on their journeys. And now, if you're joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. This fellowship is a religious community grounded in the heritage and principles of Unitarian Universalism. We seek to create loving community, inspire joy and spiritual growth, and support courageous action. All are welcome regardless of religious background, political persuasion, ethnicity, age, ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression. If you have a desire to explore questions of truth and meaning and are respectful of our diversity of people and beliefs, you have found kindred spirits here. If you'd like more information about UUFC or Unitarian Universalism, please see our information about us on our website at uufc.org. If you are interested in getting our weekly newsletter so you can get connected to our community for online social events, our weekly sharing of joys and concerns, and our collective efforts to support local social justice work, please reach out to the office by email or on our website. But now, please allow me to share a few announcements. It has come to our attention that a Gmail address has been created and someone is pretending to be Reverend Christina. If you receive one of these emails, please delete it and let us know by contacting the office at admin@uufc.org. Thank you. The Better Angels group, discussion group, is scheduled for October 13th. A link is provided in the October 8th weekly connection for more information to join and discuss this initiative. Weekly coffee with Reverend Christina via Zoom on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. All are welcome to stop by for a chat. This link is also provided in the weekly connection. Everyone is invited to join us for social chat following the service each Sunday at 11:30 a.m. See the October 8th weekly connection for the latest link to the Zoom meetup.
As we come to the end of our time together, I share these closing words by Jonna Lou Johnstone. She wrote, "We shall overcome when we can truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people. We shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome that past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that have happened and the debts left unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome as we say together, Amen, and blessed be. Take the light with you, carry the light, share the light, be the light."